Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran and we finally have this seasonal stuff in the raid, which should be hopefully online over in ANA sometime soon. Apparently there's going to be a long downtime for the servers before everything is up, so hopefully it doesn't take too long before we here, at least on the ANA side, get to dive into the new raid, get some gear, do some Mythic Pluses, and finally get into some arenas. It's also going to be interesting to see a bunch of balance tunings that'll happen on Tuesday, and I'll most likely make a video as soon as we have some new updates for classes. There's a lot of classes and specs right now that are just running wild in PvP as well as in dungeons, so it's going to be interesting what's going to get nerfed and what's importantly going to get buffed. In this video, we're going to go over all the new seasonal stuff and how the weekly box this season with the new expansion is going to work, as there's going to be a lot more opportunity for hopefully better gear, not more gear, but hopefully better gear from a variety of different content. So first of all, what are we getting this week? The seasonal stuff for Mythic Pluses with now weekly chests, as well as Mythic Plus bosses, as well as Mythic Plus loot with a new seasonal affix. PvP and the PvP season begins with Conquest gear from Conquest vendors, as well as the raid. And the raid will also have different things with gear, which we'll talk about in a bit. First of all, the weekly system. How will the weekly chests work? Now, with this expansion, it's going to be one big vault. And depending on what kind of content you do for the week, you'll have a different pieces that you can get from that vault for the week. That means raids contribute to that weekly gear. Dungeons also contribute to the gear, as well as PvP. You will still come back from this vault with one loot, one piece, whether it's a weapon, whether it is shoulders, or even if nothing is good on it, you can always opt in for anima, which is something we had access to back in the beta. Maybe Blizzard will change the currency that you'll get, but this is how it worked in the beta, and this is how it is expected to work with this release. In this screenshot right here, we can see kind of how the system works. And this system has gone through a lot of iterations in the beta, but this is where we can take a look at this system right now. You have three different options for gearing: raiding, mythic dungeons, as well as PvP. Killing bosses in raids on higher difficulty will reward you with not only a slot where an item can drop, a randomized item of the raid tier, but also the higher the difficulty is, the higher the item piece is. So getting all 10 bosses defeated on Heroic will give you 3 chances at gear. You will still come back with only one piece from this weekly reward, but you'll have 3 options to pick from. So the more bosses you kill and the higher the difficulty, the better the gear should be, the higher item level it will be, and you will be able to hopefully, out of those 3, find the one that is the best for your character. Same thing with dungeons. Completing one weekly chest, the higher the level, the better, is going to give you a piece, but also completing 4 dungeons and even 10 for the week, if you're someone who grinds a lot of Mythic Pluses, again opens you up for more gear. The higher the Mythic Plus level of those dungeons, the better the drops, but the lower the level, the worse they are. I think for the first slot, it will calculate whatever's the first dungeon to dive in. So if it's a plus 15 first thing at the end of the week, you just need to finish it, don't even need to time the key, you'll have a opportunity of a 15 piece. Maybe then you do a couple 10s, so then the game will take those 4 dungeons that you do after the first one, and it'll kind of try to figure out an average level of the keys. So you can't just do a 15 and then a bunch of like 2s, because then the average item level or the average level of those keys will combine into a lower number. So if you do 10 of them that are 15s, that's 3 pieces of 15 Mythic Plus loot, 3 chances of gear. And then there's PvP, which is a bit of an enigma in its own, and Blizzard had a different iteration in the last few, literally 2 weeks of beta, where they had honor gotten from 2v2s, 3v3s, and battlegrounds. But now it looks like Blizzard changed it to just honor earned for that week from any kind of content. Pretty sure with PvP is going to have a link to your current CR. So the higher rated you are in 2v2s or 3v3s, the better the drops are going to be. But with PvP, there's also a whole vendor with a conquest gear, as well as the gear is going to scale based on your CR from there as well. So that's a whole nother avenue of you to get gear. So maybe PvP might be super lucrative this expansion. There is potential that this system might look slightly different once the patch is actually released, as there was a lot of last minute changes with Shadowlands in particular. Again, this system looked completely different in the last 2 weeks of the beta, but that's what it looks like the weekly chest as well as rewards are going to look like. Raids, dungeons, and PvP all contributing towards your one massive weekly reward, with up to 9 different options for you to pick from, and you'll still only take away one piece out of all of those, which hopefully will throw less gear at you, because the game in the last expansion tend to just kind of chuck gear at the player constantly, whether the gear was good or most of the times wasn't good, but at least you got a lot of it, and eventually you'll get something decent. Hopefully with this system you'll have higher chances of getting something you actually want and will actually use. We have Castle Nathria being opened up with 10 bosses, with the last 2 bosses actually granting you higher item level loot. And once those 2 bosses have been slain for the week, you will also be able to start to get loot from those final 2 bosses in your weeklies as well. So if you can finish the whole raid on normal, the last 2 bosses will give you better upgrades, or better yet, heroic can get you ahead of the curve ahead of the time, and then start grinding mythics the next week, as the mythic race will open a week after the release of this raid on heroic. The fights look really cool back in the beta, they were super enjoyable to test, and I hope you guys will enjoy a variety of the mechanics that they will offer. And then we have Mythic Plus, with a brand new seasonal affix, as well as other affixes you'll get to experience. We have an affix of Spiteful, which will remind you a little bit of Corruption, where you'll have these guys that will chase you after you slain an enemy. Be sure to eliminate them or crowd control them, because they die off pretty quick. We got Storming with a bunch of Hurricanes, which is going to be hell for a variety of melee, as well as one called Inspiring, which makes enemies around the ad that has Inspiring immune to CC. So rogues and other classes with AoE stuns are going to be a little bit less strong for those situations. And then we have Spiteful, which will be very similar to Reaping of Season 2 of BFA. When you hit certain checkpoints of enemies slain inside of a dungeon, you will spawn a Prideful ad, which will do a lot of damage and have a couple mechanics for the group to deal with and dodge. The ad needs to be nuked pretty quickly, but once you slain the ad, you gain the Prideful buff, making yourself 30% more effective. Take that buff into trash bags and bosses to eliminate them quickly. And finally, we have the PvP season also available. This one is going to have vendors, and it's going to have 2v2s, 3v3s, as well as RBGs back up and open. So dive into those as quickly as you can. Cap Honor as well as Cap Conquest. Use the Conquest to buy better gear from Conquest from the new Conquest vendor. It's going to be more of a simple system from older expansions of Honor vendors and Conquest vendors that Blizzard have had in previous expansions. So it's going to be a lot more familiar to a lot of you guys that have played older expansions before. I think the system should be good, and it's proven itself to be actually something that a lot of the community is excited for. So cannot wait to dive into arenas myself. And that's going to be everything we have with the seasonal update available. There's a lot to explore and a lot to do. And also with all the Renown and the Covenant Sanctum stuff, there's even more stuff to do on your mains as well as alts. And hopefully this is where all the alt-friendly catch-up mechanics start kicking in if you are someone who wants to play multiple characters this expansion. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this update. Let me know what you think about it, and hopefully this will go pretty smooth. I heard the downtime for servers is going to take quite a while. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.